Hello, everyone. This is Professor Victor Singing Eagle with more awesome indigenous intellect to share with my students of Native American literature. It's springtime here at the foot of lovely 4,321 meter tall Wakanunnituki That's what the natives here call it, meaning a mountain so big it takes forever to walk around. It's kind of covered with clouds, but you can see that it's snow-capped still. And wow, I look so dark. Oh, look at that. Now this camera is really finicky, so bear with me. I'm going to sit down and turn around and face the river. There is a method to my madness. This is the Shasta River, situated at the foot of 14,172 foot tall Mount Shasta. Shasta River, Mount Shasta, named after a tribe which the newcomers came along and nearly wiped out. Their population is pretty much decimated. There's still a few left, not a whole lot, but all this land you see before you is sacred, and it once belonged, and still does belong to, the Shasta Indians. Now, I've got to slow down and tell the story straight. Now, one thing I got to tell you as I try to tell the story straight is, again, this is situated in the Banana Belt, a sliver of land which, relative to the land around it, has mild weather. Perfect for the natives who once lived here. Whereas it's snowing and windy and stormy all around the mountains everywhere, and this little valley here, it's nice and green and lush and warmer. So the Shasta people built villages all along this river. Big, teeming, bustling villages full of people. The water, which is now just a sliver of what it once used to be. This river used to be bigger and wider. It used to be teeming with life. Rainbow trout, salmon, turtles, crayfish, freshwater clam. And the beaver and raccoon used to come down here and do their thing, and the deer would come, rabbit and quail. And you could see all along the river there's blackberry bushes and gooseberry bushes growing. So the people, and here's some cattail, which is also edible, but we don't have time to talk about that right now. The newcomers came along, and of course they dammed up the river and rerouted it and kind of messed it up. You can also see that spring is still springing. Soon this whole area is going to be very, very green and lush, even much more so than it is now. It's just barely waking up and coming back to life. I see there's still freshwater clam. I don't know if you guys can see that. But in the water there are clamshells, probably harvested by the raccoon that still live in this area. Deer and raccoon are all we have left, and rabbits. The people are long gone. What happened to them? Well, that's kind of what this story is all about. Hope I can walk through this land carefully without shattering my iPad. Long, long time ago, way before any of you guys were born, There was nobody here after the Indians disappeared, and it stayed that way for years and years and years. Nobody here. But one middle-aged Potawatomi man who worked all his life at the telephone company and saved his pennies decided he wanted a better life. He was sick of living in Los Angeles. Drive-by shootings. I'm going to harvest me some more sweet sage here. Thank you. Thank you, Mama Sage. So he built a house. I'll show you it in a minute. Now this camera is probably going to act up and it'll probably white out everything that I want to show you, but I'll do my best. So the Potawatomi man brought his wife, his younger son, and his baby daughter, and they built a house right on the river. And for many years, this was the only house here. Not that one, that's too big. I'll show you in a second. First, let me put the sage down and keep walking. Bear with me as I continue my story. An excellent challenge question for you guys is, what the heck does this all have to do with Native American literature? Well, I'll tell you. First, you gotta understand, the little boy who lived here was all alone. I mean, he had a mom and a dad and a little sister, but all these houses were not here. We got a new house right there, another relatively new house there, but for a long time, the only house for miles and miles around was that tan house way down there. I don't know if you could see it. Again, I apologize for shaking. This is not a professional production. Let's go a little bit faster as I try to tell the story and walk at the same time. I see there's some winter storm damage to that juniper tree there. You can still see the river. So the little boy who loves trees very much, many of these trees which he planted himself, he grabbed a shovel and he would dig holes and plant trees. And as he planted and as he dug, he kept encountering evidence of previous human activity. This is important. So the boy did some research and he realizes, yes, the Shasta Indians once lived in this area. And the more he dug and the more he walked around and combed the land, see that tan house there? That's the house that used to be the only house. And deer come along still and visit. But we don't have time to talk about that. We got to stay focused. The Indian boy would dig up arrowheads, manos and metates, and awls. That's A-W-L, an awl, made out of chert and obsidian and volcanic rock. That's for the manos and metates. If you don't know what that is, look it up. I'll give you a clue. It has something to do with grinding acorns to make acorn stew or acorn mush. I love that big tall tree. Wow, I bet that tree can tell some stories. Well, again, the boy found every single time he dug, every single time he walked around this, which was once empty land, he'd find arrowheads and other tools, and even beads, shell beads and bone beads, evidence of human activity. So he theorized that this was once a big and quite bustling Shasta Indian village, or maybe even a town, or maybe you might call it a city. Again, this is in the banana belt. All around, all the other land is cold and windy. And over there, you probably saw it, it's kind of barren and dry, but as you get close to the river, it turns green and lush. So it's perfect. The deer come walking through and they walk to the water to get sips. There's rabbit, raccoon, all kinds of critters, and blackberries and gooseberries. So it's perfect. So that means the Shasta could live here and thrive. That is, until the newcomers came along. By the way, you can see the little trees here. The crazy Indian is still a big fan of planting. And you can see that he has to put, what do you call it, wire mesh around the trees to keep the deer from nibbling the bark. There's one that the deer had attacked. You could see there with a bandage around it. Poor thing. But it'll grow out of it. There's a poor, sad-looking cedar tree. There's some giant sequoias over here. Now here's where we get to the tragic part. I gotta tell the story and keep it straight. So, as I was telling you, this was the only house for many years. Lonely Indian boy walking around, finding evidence of native occupation, dwelling, sacred villages all around this river. Perfect place. There's a big chunk of obsidian right here. I don't know if you can see that, with some termites under it. That's not good. Well, I'm going to sit over here and see if I can finish telling you this story without messing it up. Well, maybe I won't sit. I walk around too much. Beautiful. This river used to be much bigger, like I said before, and then the newcomers came along and they rerouted it and dammed it up. So you know there's not very many trout anymore, and of course no salmon. So it's pretty much a shadow of what it once was. However, our story does not end. Again, I was telling you the story of the Shasta Indians and the boy that lived here, and how he discovered evidence of a teeming, bustling civilization. Well, he realized that every inch of this land, every square centimeter of this land has a story, a sacred story to tell. The people that lived here, and the tragedy of the Shasta people. I'll try to tell this story without overdoing it, as I am wont to do. And you can see that the trees are damaged and still trying to survive. But what happened is the gold rush, the 1849 gold rush, and the newcomers came in successive waves, just breaking against the shore of the humans, the natives that lived here before. And as they came and encroached on Indian land, they demanded more and more land and pushed the Indians out. And they scorned and looked down on the Indians. And when these miners came looking for their gold, they hunted the Indians for sport in their spare time. Yes, I said it. Yes, it's the truth. They hunted the Indians for sport. And in one final solution, as they might call it, of how to get rid of the Indians once and for all, they decided to invite them to a great big feast way over there in what's now called the Scotts Valley. I call it Strychnine Valley for reasons which you will understand in a minute. Strychnine Valley. Well, they invited all the Indians to this great feast with a barbecue, and lots of meat, and everybody spread out their blankets and they brought out the goodies, but they didn't tell the Indians that the meat was laced with strychnine. So the poor Shastas were hunted, they were killed off by disease, and a final insult, they were poisoned with strychnine, which is pretty much rat poison. And whoever survived, they rounded up and marched at gunpoint to Oklahoma, what they used to call Indian Territory. There are still a few Shastas left, but nowhere near in the numbers there used to be. And even to this day, as you walk around here and you're quiet and you listen, beyond the voices and the songs of the red-winged blackbirds and the little Pacific tree frogs and the bullfrogs and the rushing river, sometimes you can hear the spirits of the Shasta Indians crying out. That's my story and I'm sticking with it. Thank you so much. By the way, as I prepare to end this little story, reminding you. Oh, I hear ducks too. I forgot there's ducks here. Neat. Reminding you that this story, there's a challenge question that comes along with it. Why would your crazy Indian professor who teaches Native American literature torture you with pictures of the land and stories about the land? What does the land have to do with Native literature? That's the question. Okay? Alrighty then. Thank you so much. You guys have an awesome rest of the week, and we'll talk later. Bye-bye.